Welcome to Rediscovering the Beatles, and I'm Mark Morse. Today's episode is going to be a little different than usual. What I'm going to do is I wanted to kind of explain the impetus of this channel, how it came about, and answer the question, why the Beatles and why now? At the end of this video, I'm hoping that you will understand the joy I've found in the Beatles and how they've really helped me out, especially a fuller description of my story and how the Beatles really gave me kind of a new punch for life, and that's what I'm going to go over today. So I wanted to start off with like a really brief history of my passion for the Beatles. I was born in 1962. People talk about the first generation and the second generation of Beatle fans. I've always considered myself kind of a 1.5 generation. I was born in 1962, but I was in a large family. I was born into a family of 9 kids, and I was towards the end. I was the second from the last. And I had a lot of older brothers and sisters. I had a sister particularly who loved the Beatles. So I was brought up with this music in my ears almost immediately. The Ed Sullivan show had the Beatles on for the first time in 1964. I was 2 years old. I don't remember it, but I was in a room full of my brothers and sisters, and my sister tells me how I stood up in my diapers and stared at the TV whenever the Beatles came on and sang. So I've had this fascination since just infant, ever since I was an infant. My sister would collect those Beatle trading cards. I should have grabbed some for this thing, but those Beatles trading cards, and she would always test my brothers and sisters on which Beatle is this, who is this, and I remember watching on and trying to guess. I was terrible at it. I got better at it as I got older. I just had all these Beatles memories. I grew up, my formative years were in those 1960s when the Beatles were going through their growth. But I really didn't become a Beatles fan. I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade, and I remember just being fascinated with the Sgt. Pepper album cover. I didn't really listen to the music so much, but I was fascinated with the cover and reading the lyrics on the back. And in the gatefold, they had the Beatles sitting there. And I remember looking at Paul McCartney and thinking, I want to look like Paul McCartney. And I had talked my mother into let me grow out a Beatle haircut. We, in our family, when you were growing up, my mom had one haircut for everybody. She took that buzzer thing, zoom, 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 zipped off all your hair. The crew cut, I think they called it. As we got a little older, she would let us grow out our bangs a little bit, but we always had to have short hair. About 4th or 5th grade, I talked my mom into letting me grow my hair out like a Beatle. If I remember, I'll put a little picture up of my 4th grade picture. I'm really cute. And how happy I was to be able to have a Beatle haircut. Junior high school, I was, as you can imagine, as a lot of kids are, when you're a young teenager and you're in a new school, I was very awkward. I was painfully thin, painfully pale. My Beatle haircut had grown out into this kind of frizzy mess. I was just a mess. What happened though that really perked things up for me was I met a girl and she loved the Beatles, and I was so happy to meet somebody who loved the Beatles. So this would have been like mid-1970s, and you would think there'd been more Beatle fans around, but in southeast Iowa in the 1970s, I didn't have a lot of people my age that I could talk to about the Beatles. But she loved the Beatles, I loved the Beatles, and we ended up going out. So the Beatles are really responsible for my transformation from being the shy, awkward boy into being somebody's boyfriend and having a girlfriend. It was so exciting, and we just loved the Beatles, talked about the Beatles. Her favorite Beatle was Ringo. My favorite Beatle was and is John Lennon. We had a lot of discussions about that. So being a big Beatle fan and loving the Beatles kind of became part of my identity. It was, you know how you're always looking for an identity when you're younger. My identity kind of came with the Beatles. It's like, oh, Mark Morse, yeah, he really likes the Beatles and he plays Frisbee. That was kind of my identity. They just became part of who I was. They were my favorite band forever. I mean, they were for decades. If anybody ever asked me, who's your favorite band, I wouldn't think about it. I'd say the Beatles. As I started getting older, I was listening to so much stuff. You know, Beatles were a gateway to a lot of other great music, as many of you already know. I started listening to a lot of stuff, and I started buying lots of records. I love the records. I love laying on the floor and reading the backs of the records as they played on my turntable. It was just, that's when I was the happiest. But as I got older, I started like, you know, the Beatles, they might not be my favorite band anymore. Maybe it's the Rolling Stones. Maybe it's Tom Waits. Maybe it's the Pogues. These other bands a chance to be my favorites. As I kept getting older, especially in the 90s when the big CD craze was going on, I was moving around a lot, and I started giving away my records because they were so difficult to transport all the time. They were always the heaviest thing I had, and so I started giving them away to people I loved. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have all these on CD someday anyway. I don't need the records. I got rid of my turntable. I saved like 40 of I probably had 700 records when I started giving them away. And I kept 40 of them on me, but I didn't have a turntable to play them on. I never played the records. Years went on. I was married. I was divorced. I have a sweet girl named Luxie. She's 21 years old and lives in Los Angeles now. But all my life, I had struggled with depression and anxiety. I was just an unhappy person. And all my life, I just struggled with it. It's always been a battle for me. But the beautiful thing about having depression and having it so many times is the knowledge that, yes, I've had this before. I will get out of it again. So I was going on like that. I've always liked that phrase, life of quiet desperation. I feel that's how I've lived a lot of my life, just kind of a suffering in silence kind of person. In the last few years, the last several years, as I've gotten older, I'm in my 60s now, and I noticed I had fallen into depression that wasn't going away. It was really hanging on 2 years, which was longer than usual. Usually I knew I'd come out, and I was starting to feel like this is my life now. This is how every day I'm going to wake up and feel like this. I'm going to think like this. And what I had done is I had made this playlist, a YouTube playlist, where I made a playlist of songs that I would play every day, usually when I was at work. And they were the most depressing songs in the world. They were just really depressing. I could not find songs sad enough to satisfy or satiate the sadness I felt. I'm like, this song is sad, but it's not sad enough. So I was always on the lookout for something that would really really speak to my sadness. And so the age-old question was, am I sad because I'm listening to so much sad music, or am I listening to so much sad music because I'm sad? Well, I'd gotten into this, where that depression had hung on so long that I started to get a little worried because, there's a thing I've read about recently called passive suicide. It's where you're not actively going to do suicide, but you might do stupid things. Like one of the things I would do, I have to cross these train tracks before I get to work. And of course, arms come down most of the time if a train was coming, but it's always wise to look anyway. I decided, like, at times, I'm like, I'm not going to look. I'm just going to turn the radio up loud. I'm going to cross those tracks, and if a train hits me, that's the way it is. It's just a new term I've heard, and it's kind of fascinating to me because I've seen myself do this at several times in my life. But I was obviously very depressed, and then I got a new car. And the new car wasn't so great. It was just a Toyota Camry, or Corolla, but it came with, I think it was like a free month of Sirius Radio XM. And what was interesting about it was the first thing I saw when I turned it on was the Beatles Channel. Well, I'd been listening to the Beatles. I didn't stop listening to the Beatles, but I just didn't listen to them very much. I'd listened to them so extensively for so many years. It just wasn't new to me or fresh to me anymore. But I started listening to that channel, and I'm like, wow, I forgot how great these songs are. These are really good songs. And like, I was surprised the Beatles had really good songs. But I'm like, so I started listening to that station exclusively. And then I would play it at work. So I replaced the sad little playlist I had just because I was interested in the Beatles Channel. And what was cool about the Beatles Channel, and they're not paying me anything for this, they can if they want to, but they're not paying me anything for this, is there's so much information on there. And I started getting interested in the Beatles again, and I started buying records again. My friend Lily, she said, you got these records here. It's crazy you don't have a turntable. For I can't remember, my birthday or something, she bought me a turntable. And I was able to listen to those records again. And then I was listening to this Beatles music all day at work. And without even trying or even thinking I was doing anything, one day I was listening to some Beatles song. I found myself just kind of smiling to myself. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in a good mood today. And it was so bizarre because I had been so gloomy for so long, or at least inside. I don't think people really, I don't know how good I was, but I felt like I'm pretty good faker. But to find myself happy, I was just like, well, that's weird. I didn't really associate it with the music at first, but every day I started feeling better and better and better. And one day I'm just like, I wonder if listening to all this joyous Beatles music has changed my frame of mind or something, because I think my depression's over. I don't think I'm depressed anymore. And that's a weird thing to kind of realize suddenly. And so I continued with that. And I listened to Beatles. I started buying Beatle records again, started listening to records again. And then I started getting interested in all sorts of other things. Published a couple books. Something I'd been wanting to do for years, but I finally got the energy and the motivation to get these books published. I started restoring my Beatles collection. I started reading up on things again. I started thinking about this YouTube channel. About the beginning of this year, I'm like, I'm going to do this rediscovering the Beatles. I feel like I've rediscovered the Beatles, and the Beatles have brought me some energy into my life. The other thing I should mention is I'm not saying that listening to the Beatles music hours a day is going to help everybody or is going to bring people out of depression. I have a lot of support. I have a really good support network. I have a great dog. I have a great dog named Elsa. She's a blue heeler. She might walk back and forth behind me through this video. She's pretty camera shy. But I have some great friends and I have some great family. I really do have a strong support network. But I really do feel a lot of it was just listening to positive music that made me happy. And what I just wanted to do was let people know that if you're in a place like I was, where I was like passively suicidal, just every day was just sadness and just a burden. Everything seems distant and detached, and you don't feel like you're part of anything. You feel like you could fade away and nobody would notice. Well, that's what mental illness is. It tells you these lies that make the sadness. It validates the sadness and the depression. I've seen therapists, and I still take medicine. There are lots of things to do, but my advice to everybody doesn't have to be the Beatles. It could be anything that brings you joy. Now, if your joy is feeling miserable, you can surround yourself with things that make you feel miserable and stuff, but I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do that. So that's how this channel came around, and that's why I call it Rediscovering the Beatles. And in my little description of the page, I say something like, rediscovering the Beatles in my 60s for fun and mental health. I really do feel the Beatles have helped me with my mental health. I feel better every day. I'm happier than I've been in years, honestly. Again, I can't give the Beatles credit for all that, but I am overjoyed that I have rediscovered the Beatles and that I'm here to talk about it. That I was never smashed by a train. That I'm here to pet my dog and be with my friends and love my friends and my family and be around all these people that are so supportive. And then you guys on YouTube, I'm hoping you'll take this as just a little expose to see what's in my mind when I'm talking about the Beatles, how much joy they bring me. And so this has gone on too long already, but I just wanted to get this story out. For watching. There was this... forgot this thing. So one of the things that I'd heard on the Beatles channel was John Lennon talking about, 21 minutes. John Lennon talking about projecting a positive future. Project a positive future, even if you have to fake yourself into it. If you can start projecting that positive future, things will start to change for you. And I've really taken that to heart, and I've really seemed to notice some good changes. I'm not saying that I'm never going to be depressed again or that I will never struggle again. But I think I have a much better handle on things than I used to. If anybody else has gone through this or is going through this, just know that it can end and it will end if you want it to, and not in the passive suicidal way. So again, thank you for watching and sticking this out so far. I'd be shocked if anybody watches this whole damn thing. But thank you if you did, and I will talk to you more, less expose next time, more Beatles stuff. But thank you for watching, and Mark Morse, over and out. Thank you so much.